Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. It's time to review The Green Knight, the new David Lowery film. This is an adaptation of a 14th century medieval poem. It's kind of this slow burn adventure epic, but it's not like one that you've seen before. Film stars Dev Patel, who's just this, ordinary guy who accepts the Green Knight's challenge to deal him a blow with a sword. And the deal is that in a year's hence, Dev Patel will have to go seek out the Green Knight and receive the same blow that he gave to the Green Knight. Dev Patel thinks that completing this challenge will get him honor and some glory too. So this ended up being one of those A24 films with great critic reviews and bad audience reviews. So you have to know what you're getting in for here. You're not going to get lots of combat, and you are going to get slow, deliberate pacing, and you're going to get things that leave you scratching your head and thinking, well, there's a lot of symbolism in here. There's some themes that it's going for. It's going for like a deeper meaning here. So if you're someone who doesn't go to the movies for that, you might not get much out of this. And if you do think this film is for you, you are probably going to be like, holy shit, you're just gonna soak it in. You're like, I'm the sponge for this movie. There's so much to be just in awe of. The film creates a world like we haven't really seen in films, where you get a take on the medieval times and it's full of like action because it has to have this giant budget, and you have to draw people in with action and fighting and sword battles. But this one lets you be in a world that embraces this fantasy where you're constantly given apparitions that don't really make sense, and they're not explained to you as to like why they're there or what they're supposed to mean. And the film overall is just very beautiful. I think it kind of wants you just to sit back and take it all in and just appreciate that you're on some sort of dream coaster and you don't really know where this is going. But rather than a roller coaster, it's more like one of those Disney rides that just goes through a tunnel slowly, and you just kind of like more appreciate the scenery. We may not get very many movies that look this good or better the entire year. I felt like I was at the King's Feast watching this movie, just being given so much food that I couldn't even eat it all. Even the trailer didn't prepare me for how it just feels to watch this movie. David Lowery really makes sure that each moment of this film is just looking stunning. From the cinematography to the production design, the costumes, and even the visual effects were really impressive for a movie where it was apparent that the budget wasn't really like this giant epic thing. And so it was even more stunning to see such well-utilized visual effects in a film that felt like it had a smaller scale. And it's also a treat for the ears too. The sound design is really great, and the score is easily going to be one of the best of the year. There's such a variety of sounds used in it. Some of them are harking back to like the old medieval flute kind of tunes that you would expect to hear in a movie like this, and some of them are more abstract and surreal, and there's even some sounds that are clearly more electronic. Yeah, the score was possibly my favorite element of this film. It comes in at exactly the right times where it starts to evoke something or like a different tone that maybe even visually it's not conveying, but it's kind of felt under the surface. And I just can't wait to listen to the score on Spotify. It's absolutely gorgeous. And Dev Patel in this movie is absolutely great. I think that this is one of his finest performances. It really just showcases him as someone who's such a thoughtful actor. Like, the movie is requiring that he really plays it underneath the surface, and that deep desire to like be a knight, but also just being unsure of what that even means for him is very present. I thought Dev Patel did a great job in capturing this character's fears, and that really allows you to see like who this character is beneath the surface. I'd like to see a lot more Dev Patel. This movie kind of made me wonder like why we don't see that much of Dev Patel. Also, Alicia Vikander, amazing in this movie. She completely brings home the film's emotional core in a couple really key scenes. To me, this was her best performance since Ex Machina. She was just hypnotic in this film. Also, shout out to Sean Harris. He was really good in the role as the king. And I also think that Joel Edgerton deserves a mention for his smaller role. Now, in terms of story, we have watched this movie twice now. The first time I watched it, I was pretty befuddled at the end of this film. I didn't really understand it. I thought, okay, I need to watch this again. We talked about it. I actually felt like I did have a decent interpretation of the movie. There were a couple pieces that I was missing. I felt that I was sort of like going in a circle around the center, the core of the film, and I was determined to find it the second time. There's kind of an endless amount of things that you could dissect if you choose to see significance in them, like even just flashes of little paintings that happen. There's probably more packed in there than I would even be like willing to dissect. However, what was important to me is, am I going to find the core of this film, what it's really about? The film is a take on what it means to be a knight.
So does this deliver on making a statement about what that means? To me, this message is just confused in the end. Even on a second viewing, I've been kind of racking my brain to see what the conclusion is in terms of like where this character ends up on this spectrum of honor, and especially like how the last 20 minutes kind of ties into this ultimate decision that he makes. And I really can't find the answer that I'm looking for. And I was pretty disappointed, to be honest, in just going over my notes for this film, going over all the observations that I've been making and what I think the film seems to be going for. But then where it ends up, I'm just sort of confused.
I actually left the second viewing of this film thinking like, I got it. I wrapped it up perfectly. I had a little notebook. I was like, it's all in here. I wrote down all the good notes I needed. I felt like so many scenes had a clear defined purpose leading up to the end. But I realized later when we were talking about the movie and reading things that David Lowery had said about the movie that the end wasn't actually as I thought it might have been. And since then, I've actually spent like a decent amount of time trying to weave together the movie and put it back together. I can see the motifs here. The gift giving, the honor, the lust, the color green, nature and death. Like I see how these things seem like they're weaving together. And yet something about the very ending of this movie doesn't feel like it wraps everything together the way that it seems like it should. And then I actually do go back to the end of the original text that this is based on. And I think that end makes more sense to me. David Lowery changed the ending. I have no problem with like deviating from the source material. I'm not even someone who wants to say like, oh, you got to read the source material to be able to understand it. I'm just saying that ending that I read about seems like it makes a little more sense. And I also just admire that this is a movie that is making me like want to dissect it and spend a lot of time on it. So I do kind of love the movie, but it's just something about it is slightly frustrating me. For me, it is, I think, just the very end. Like everything else makes a lot of sense as to where this movie seems like it's going.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to David Lowery for crafting such a visual and cinematic treat, especially when you consider the filmmaking in the final act. In the final act, there's so much that's communicated without any dialogue whatsoever, and it's just beautiful filmmaking. And there was such a clear point to that entire sequence as well. Like that was very clear even on the first viewing, like what it was going for. One touch I really loved that David Lowery brought to this film, and that he brings to all of his films, it seems, is this tenderness. This film in many ways like could have been purely cerebral, but there really was something very soft and warm at the heart of it, which I think is also key to understanding the film, and that is something that I still did take away.
And some of the existential fears I think going on here did resonate with me as well.
I'm also going to give a shout out to his previous film, A Ghost Story. I actually like that film even more than this one. I think that is a fantastic film and another brilliant piece of filmmaking.
Can't wait for Peter Pan and Wendy. Like truly and honestly, it's the Disney remake that I have to be looking forward to most. We want to get a lot deeper into the feelings that we're expressing about like where the movie seems like it's going, what it means. And we will have a spoiler review shortly after this one to talk about all those things. We're going to get deep into the analysis.
High recommendation. You have to see this movie this year. However, I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10 on this one. Unfortunately, I did like it a little better the first time.
I'm still going with a 9 out of 10 on this because I feel like it's so close to being there that I still am able to get the gist of what the movie is going for. And I think it's one of the highlights of the year so far for me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
What color night are you?